prohibited. Chickens constrained within coops and fenced runs located at least 50 feet from any residence not owned or occupied by the owner of the chickens. And of course, all Berea nuisance ordinances and building codes apply. So no matter what you've got, if they become a nuisance for any reasons, then that would trigger whatever
Yeah,
else. But-
I've got that right here in front of me. They sent that to me. I thought that was a good starting point.
And just to clarify, when you've got these distances, that is the distance to an actual structure, not to like a property boundary.
No, not a property boundary. That's
Okay.
that's a distance to the structure. It says residence. That's the way we've always looked at it. We've got several chickens in town right now. I mean, it's not forbidden. It's just a little difficult to understand. It's a little hard to do it the way it currently is. They really have to.
They have to have at least an acre, right? Presently?
No, you can do the feedlot thing,
Oh, okay.
but they can't meet the 350 with the feedlot. See, that's the problem. Because if you got a house and a lot, your lot's not gonna be, I mean, there's nowhere.
So it is in violation now.
A lot of them are, and we've had to note violations a lot of times.
We've had, what, 3 opinions I've had to write in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, Board of Adjustment had
Yeah.
two situations, I guess.
You know, one thing that occurred to me, I was involved in one of these because it was some friends who I did some work for and found out all this stuff. If 20 chickens as an animal unit,
25.
25, these people had 3 chickens. And so to me, that was like an eighth of an animal unit, and they shouldn't need an acre. Seemed to me like an eighth of an acre ought to do it.
Yeah.
But that wasn't how the opinion came out, I think.
Well, and that's right, that's the way it's not written there.
But you know, logically, it makes sense. Is if it's a density thing, if you need an acre for an animal unit, if you have an eighth of an animal unit, maybe you only need an eighth of an acre. But anyway, so that's one thing that, you know, probably ought to be thought about in drafting an ordinance. Can you divide? Another thing that occurs to me is, what about rabbits? Because that's another animal
Or
that people
ducks.
in town. Yeah, okay.
Other species.
The people in town are likely, you know, one guy said to me, you know, if rabbits laid eggs, you'd never would have heard of a chicken. Rabbits are a great meat animal, and they're very easy to handle in a very small space. You just have a little coop, and they stay in there, and there's typically not a smell problem and not a behavior problem and all that kind of thing. So I just wonder if we want to just make this about chickens, or if we, need to expand our parameters a little bit.
I mean, George, right now, rabbits are not in the list. Whether that's a mission or whatever. So I guess that would mean that now, Dale, you can legally have as many rabbits as you want within town, right?
Well, see, there's this whole thing about, is it a pet? If it, you
It
can
is
have,
until you eat it.
you can have a bunch of big, loud, misbehaving dogs in your yard, very close to your neighbor, and it's not against any ordinance, as long as they're not, becoming a nuisance. But you can't have 3 chickens when all the neighbors love them and you have lots of space for them. So, you can claim a rabbit's a pet, but then like you have it for supper, so is that a pet? And, it's this funny thing about how we think about animals, and how do you write that into an ordinance?
If we're going to put the time into this, we ought to cover more than just chickens. Anticipating questions in the future about other species.
I would have assumed that I think the whole ordinance is gonna change, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. Because right now, all we're talking about is chickens at this point, that's all it's been asked about. But it would seem that the ordinance itself it needs a lot of work in the entire ordinance. But now, maybe there will be maybe if chickens is something that the general public as a whole wants to see, maybe that might be pulled out separately and dealt with separately at this time. And then the rest of it needs to be dealt with at some time, because none of it really makes much sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the whole thing.
Yeah.
And if we stick to these animal unit equivalents that you've presented, then 25 chickens, and if we're going to allow 5 or 6, then it seems like we might also justify 1 goat, because 5 goats equal 25 chickens.
It's a good point. It's a good point. I have people that has goats.
Would, when we
They use them for
when we
milk.
finally come up with an ordinance, whatever it might be, chickens are chickens, but what about gamecocks?
Well, no males. No males. I think we already said
No males.
no boys, only girls.
Can't have any males.
Well, and the other thing that occurs to me is that
My neighbor.
And I don't know if you